Wherever you find yourself on Ethos, you'll need a PDA to navigate the treacheries of the Stormlands. Originally introduced and used by the Coalition, they've become a common sight in almost every region. With their rugged nature, the devices have proven their worth on Ethos countless times over the centuries. Used to access regional maps and the occasional black box of a crashed airship or land crawler, the devices are easy to use, like a miniature computer strapped to your hip or on your arm. Newer models even come equipped with a camera, very useful for archaeological expeditions or just basic record keeping of the various sites along your travels. PDAs and their components are interchangeable, regardless of the many manufacturers behind them. Modern Itosian PDAs, while very similar to smartphones, are much more utilitarian in their functionality. As the technology improved, the cost of producing the devices dropped, making them accessible to the wider public. Their usefulness spread to encompass shops, workplaces, and even as everyday carry devices. Despite being structured the same across regions, manufacturers started producing different modules, cosmetic cases, and attachments that became highly coveted by regular users and collectors alike. Manufacturers also began to differentiate from one another by creating presets and kits for specific fields of work that could be later customized as needed by users. The highly customizable nature of these devices meant that users could create their own parts and repair them regardless of any access to dedicated repair facilities. Older generation PDCs, however, had a unique problem. The limitations in technology meant you were sacrificing storage capacity for high battery capacity and vice versa. Due in part to the fact that infrastructure is heavily scattered across Ethos, many chose high battery capacity for the trips between cities. With PDAs lacking storage capacity, the use of memory cards became commonplace. The cards would hold map and programs that could not be stored on the internal drive of the devices. With the miniaturization of components, modern PDAs could now have both high storage and high battery capacity. But memory cards did not fall out of use. The lack of a reliable means of wireless data transfer meant that they were instead adapted. Since PDAs could now store far more, the cards split into two types: secured cards and storage cards. Secured cards are unable to transfer data or programs, akin more to a key card rather than a storage device. They're often used to access sensitive networks. Workers would use them to remotely monitor the many machines in their workplaces from the comfort of a PDA. Afterwards, when done, the cards would be returned to a cabinet until they're needed again. Storage cards are far simpler, meant for wider public use. They could transfer and receive data without restriction. Programmers would often use them as installation packages, loading software and maps onto them. This made traveling easier as maps could be updated instead of having to keep track of which card had the most up-to-date map. Since these were cheaper to make than the older versions, they became somewhat disposable. However, since most Itosians detest the idea of leaving equipment out in the field to rust and rot, many would start hoarding them until they reached the city. The cards would often get recirculated back to manufacturers to be reformatted and used for newer software or as additional offhand storage. The improvements in the hardware also saw the rise in PDAs being used for entertainment. Games and music soon found their way onto memory cards to be played on PDAs. Children that had access to PDAs would trade those memory cards with one another, sharing music and save files amongst themselves. Others would load recipes, guides, and even books onto memory cards. It wasn't all that strange to see someone looking down at the screen of a PDA to read the next step in the recipe they just got. Whether it's for travel or for work or just entertainment, PDAs have become an indispensable tool for the Itosians. I hope you all liked this entry into the world of Ethos. There's so much more that I want to cover for this project, and it's been fun to figure out how best to present it to you in a somewhat professional fashion. I've already decided what the next entry will cover and have begun working on it. I'm in the process of reworking the way I make my videos and my workflow in general, so I can push these entries out faster while also trying to increase the quality of each video. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Until next time.